Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Silver Bullet Saga Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Vonderhaar. We're back with another episode leading up to the 2025 Ohio State football season. Joining me now, as always, my co-host. And as we can kind of continue putting out a little more video content, you'll actually be able to see him this time and what he's getting up to. But Adam joining us live from the rural fields of Ohio. Adam, how you doing?
Doing good, Ryan. Just had to get you unmuted there. I love my AirPods, but they don't allow for easy transition from mute to unmute. In the cab of the sprayer, I'm applying some fungicide to some R3 soybeans. R3 being the growth states that they're in. This is just a little product to help keep the crop healthy before we get the harvest here. Kind of wrapping up the spray season. It's always a sign that Buckeye football's right around the corner.
Absolutely. Thanks for the live update, Adam. And Adam, kind enough to be joining us from the sprayer cab today, giving us a live update and a little eye candy, obviously, for the folks at home. So thanks for chiming in. And whenever we hear the slow, soft hum of that sprayer, we'll know Adam's got something to say because he's obviously come off mute. Until then, just enjoy the view. In today's episode, we're going to be counting down, obviously, the days to the Ohio State home opener at noon against Texas. In the agenda today, we got a few different things to talk about. Ross Bjork out in the media this week, kind of what I would call a big announcement, talking a little bit about the game day atmosphere at Ohio State and some of the changes that are going to be made going forward. So we're going to get into that right off the bat. A little later on, we're going to talk a little bit more about Fox Big Noon, Fox Sports in general, this relationship between ESPN and the NFL, and maybe some of the fallout of some of the announcements for this week. And then later on, had the ability yesterday, I went to a stadium tour that was coined as a faculty staff appreciation event put on by the athletics department, where we got to tour the stadium, get some swag, kind of see some new sights and some of the essentially the additions that they've added post national championship here in 2024. So I'll talk about that a little bit later on. So to get things started, Ross Bjork comes out earlier this week, I believe it was on Monday, and announces this initiative that he had teased before. He'd been kind of doing the podcast rounds leading up to this for this idea of tradition evolved, right? Which is essentially it's kind of a list of additions and or changes to what the game day atmosphere is like at Ohio State, kind of what the actual procedure is, some changes to the actual pomp and circumstance. And I just figured, there's kind of a lot of things here, and there's been a lot of fallout online. If you were to look at our fan base on Twitter right now, you'd think the pets' heads are falling off, right? The end of the world's happening because of a few tweaks to how we do game day. I'm actually a fan of a lot of these changes, and we'll kind of talk through them here piece by piece. So one of the biggest pieces is the victory bell and how it's utilized at Ohio State. And even as I say victory bell, if you're a huge Ohio State fan, and maybe you are because you're tuned into the podcast right now, you might be familiar that on the southeast side of the stadium, the southeast corner of the stadium, there is a tower, essentially there, that is the Victory Bell Tower. That Victory Bell has a purpose for home games. It is rang after we win a home game, okay, essentially. So if you're on that side of the stadium and you're walking out, you might hear that kind of iconic, bell tone, going out. It's kind of a cool story with the Victory Bell, and I don't have the whole thing. We might dive into it, on a later episode, but student organization at Ohio State, I believe it's an honorary, like Alpha Phi Omega, I believe is it, but we can look into that. We'll get the producers on that, obviously, but they are tasked each year with ringing that bell, after every home game. Okay, so it's just another kind of tradition, kind of piece that fits in on an Ohio State game day, right? Just like the band marching out of the tunnel. Well, not just in college athletics, but in pro athletics, we've seen this trend the last few years of, the game's about to start, everybody's kind of made it to their seat, but what is that thing, that kind of either procedure or that marker, that indicator that lets you know, hey, it's time to get loud. The game's about to kick off. Let's get everybody on their feet and kind of start with the energy high right from kickoff. As Bengals fans, Adam and I point down the road to Cincinnati, where Katie Blackburn and the Brown family, actually, I want to give them some credit. These last few years, they've done a nice job kind of up in the playoff or the big game atmosphere inside of Paycor Stadium with the ruler of the jungle, which very simply, for in the Bengals terms, is they built this throne, out of stone that essentially looks like something maybe, Tarzan might have sat on or something like that, with all these torches and trees around it. And every game, they invite a celebrity Cincinnati fan to come back and be the quote ruler of the jungle, kind of get the crowd into it right at the beginning. And what Cincy does that I really like also is they bring in a celebrity guitar player to play the opening riff to Welcome to the Jungle, right? That gets the whole crowd hyped up and ready to go. So, Ohio State wanted to make some sort of version of that to get games started. And what they've decided to do is they're going to highlight the victory bell in a much more upfront way. They're going to have an Ohio State alumni or celebrity or fan, there to be like the honorary victory bell ringer at the start of the game. And who better to start this new tradition with against Texas, what's already being coined as the biggest opener of the year, than Archie Griffin, the only two-time Heisman Trophy winner in this season of 2025, which marks the 50th anniversary of Archie Griffin winning his second Heisman Trophy. So, there's some belly aching. The stuff that I've heard online about this is, how can you ring the victory bell before the game, right? Isn't this just going to curse us, in a game like this against Texas? To which I say, I'm not an overly superstitious guy. I am a vibes, guy. I go off of the vibes in the stadium, and the only bad vibes I get from this are those fans that are saying, "Hey, you've already cursed us against Texas because you've decided to make a new tradition get started with Archie Griffin," which I'm always a fan of. Any way we can highlight one of our greatest alumni. The other piece of that, and go ahead, Adam.
Well, no, you go ahead. Finish up.
Well, just the other piece with the victory bell is that they'll also be essentially shifting the third down noise, right? So the song or the noise that plays when Ohio State is on the field for a major third down when they're playing defense and trying to get a stop. They say that the victory bell will also be used on third downs, which Bjork kind of, I think, confusingly said that in the press conference. He was asked later to clarify it. No, Archie's not going to be up there all game, right, ringing the bell, every single third down, which would be kind of funny and cool in its own right. They're going to be piping in that bell sound just like they always have when they typically play Hell's Bells on third down. So, Adam, yeah, anything you want to do to chime in about the victory bell tradition?
I would just say um, I love it. I think there's a lot of lore to this podcast, even with the bell. You know, those that are in the know that our intro and outro is Hell's Bells, just a digitized, 8-bit version of it. And that chime, and it's been played on third down. That chime, like Bjork said, I mean, it is a tradition, and we're literally just saying, we're going to do it at the beginning of the game as well. Um, my only holdback was, wait, are we still going to do it after the game for victories? And I think your research says yes, so I'm all good with it. I got absolutely no problem with it. I think it's a good signal that the game is about to start. You start hearing that thing toll. And what a cool thing for alumni. You could see C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields, just got young guys coming back to hit the bell to start a game. I think it's a cool new tradition to do. But I know Twitter hates it, so whatever.
Nobody likes the TV timeout, 5-minute timeout where we're highlighting, different alumni and stuff on the field. I think that, and it's extremely rare for them to have a celebrity daughter, right, for Tibittle during Script Ohio, but it has happened just a few times. I think that this gives you an avenue to highlight, the great people connected to the program and to kind of help hype up those games. And exactly the most important part, Adam, they're not taking anything away on the student experience side. The students still involved in that honorary still get the same tradition at the end of the game and ringing it for a win. Okay, that's one of the big ones. We're not going to spend that much time on each one, but I did want to kind of give my thoughts on that. Expanded color out themes, okay, which is something that's just become it's just become a thing really in these last 10 years, trying to do more blackout games or scarlet out games or anything like that. I will say, as a fan base, we're not terrific at this. The blackout games, people typically do pretty well. But everybody still has their favorite shirt or jersey or jacket, or maybe it's a superstitious thing that they like to wear. But if you go to any of these color out games we've always done, there's always a bunch of folks that are obviously not following the rules. Um, this is kind of a tiny thing for me that it doesn't do a ton for me. I do know they're going to try to do a helmet stripe game later on in the season, which I think could be cool. But again, it goes back to how well do people follow the rules to be able to execute it. They're introducing a rally towel that has been properly named, quote, the towel, the Ohio State University, the towel, which fans are encouraged to bring every game. So there's some confusing pieces to this. Bjork also kind of mentioned they were maybe going to sell the towel online. So, folks that don't come to the game could still have it if they wanted to buy it, which, obviously is another money opportunity. The towel thing, listen, it could be great if everybody gets really into it and, all of our country club kind of fans that sit in the, covered B sections that yell at people for standing during games, right? Maybe the towel is something that helps get those fans a little bit more into it. Um, it definitely feels through kind of this whole re-envisioning process. We this company, which I'm sure that wasn't a small check for us to bring in a few consultants to redo the game day atmosphere plan, but it kind of looks like they kind of looked across the country and said, what are the great things that other pro teams are doing, other college teams are doing, and can we kind of reincorporate that here at OSU? Obviously, for us as Bengals fans, we think about the Steelers with the terrible towel, and there's no argument with that. The terrible towel is a great, NFL kind of, what would you call it? Like a trademark kind of element for the Steelers fan base. And maybe the towel does something similar and everybody, gets onto it and it's something that you see every single game. It could be a cool scene. This is kind of the thing with anything when you have 100,000 plus people doing anything, whether it's a red out, a blackout, waving towels around, singing the same song, it's going to be cool. So that means it all depends on how do the fans take to it. I think it's fun. This isn't a huge thing, at all. They do say for like military appreciation games, they might do a camo towel. For the blackout, you might have a black towel, stuff like that. Adam, anything to throw in on the towel?
Well, I would say I get people's holdback that it might feel like copying from the Steelers or whatever, but I do see on Twitter all the time people complaining that our fan base is mainly, older folks, season ticket holders that sometimes they have a tough time getting up and getting loud. And to me, that's what I see this as, is we're trying to incentivize people in the stands to get up, have something to do, instead of just standing there. I think you start swinging this thing, maybe it would encourage more people to get louder in the stadium. That's all I think it is. It might be a flop. I don't hate trying it. I don't think it's something that we need to say Bjork needs to be fired over. But I'm not a Twitter expert, so
Yeah, the people calling for us to cut Bjork's contract, right? Like just a couple years after signing our new AD, because they're not happy with the towel idea. I don't know that I can help those folks. Um, and just as kind of a blanket statement over each of these tradition evolved additions that we're going to be seeing this upcoming season, it is no secret at all that the Ohio State home, game day atmosphere experience needed a bit of an overhaul. Over these last 2 decades, I would say, you know, not not only do you look at attendance numbers where, if you're playing a Tulsa, we're probably not selling out the game like you did maybe 15 years ago, where it was just a guaranteed weekend and week out, we're going to have 100,000 plus people in the stadium. Okay. That's one thing. You're also now competing with a TV product that has never been better. If you want to watch the game on TV, I really can't blame you, right? You're going to pocket a couple $100 essentially by saving that money and not going to campus. The experience of actually watching the game and being able to see everything that happens is better. As you look down the road at Ohio Stadium, I don't know how. I mean, a complete audio visual overhaul of the sound system and the video boards in the stadium, if that's not near the top of any sort of renovation list, I don't exactly know what we're talking about because, yeah, you have that great kind of video board on the south stands. You really don't have anything similar. You have a small video board on the north stands, but if you're looking at like legitimate stadiums at this point in time in 2025, you're able to see replays. You're able to see, what's those small moments that are going on the field quite a bit better than you typically can in Ohio Stadium. So all that to say, I like that we're asking these questions, that we're trying to make a difference, that Bjork and the team are trying to kind of improve the atmosphere at home as we continue. The best damn band in the land. One of the biggest changes, no longer going to be in the South student section where they've been for now a couple decades. And for those of you unfamiliar with kind of the shoe, when we talk about the South side, I kind of describe it as the block of cheese. It's just one set of stands that are standalone, that go up like a triangle all on its own. That's where the band had been housed uh, for about the last 20 years. They're now moving the band back to the north side where they had been before about 20 years ago when they made that change. They are taking Block O North, which was half of the student section, or a good, not half, but a good segment of students, right? And when we say Block O, whenever you hear that, Block O North, Block O South, the Block O students are kind of your diehard students, right? The Block O is a student organization that you join essentially to be almost a professional fan of the Buckeyes on home games. They're the ones that organize the cards, like the posters that all the fans hold above their heads to maybe spell something out or make a funny, upside down M or a Brutus face or something like that. That's all Block O. Well, this is kind of a big change. They're taking Block O North and moving them to Block O South. Essentially, they're combining them all into the South stands. So the vast majority of students are all now going to be in the South stands. So I'm really curious to see how that works out. I always thought it was kind of a benefit having a mix north and south, just from a sound, perspective. Maybe having those students closer to your normal general public fans helps to get everybody louder. Now we're essentially like wild animals. We're going to be fencing the students off into that south section, and we don't use wild animals loosely, right? If you've ever watched a game in the south stands, you probably are familiar with this. If you get to the game after kickoff, there's a chance you're not going to be able to sit in your seat, because in the South stands, it's essentially the wild, wild west. If you don't get there early with your friends to mark off where your seats are, because folks want to sit with their friends and they'll just bring them into the section, and suddenly a whole section's taken over. So anyway, band to the north, students to the south. We're going to see what those kind of changes look like. I'm selfishly happy about the band moving because my staff season tickets are in section 7A for this season. So I'll be right next to the band, which I always love being able to hear them throughout the game. Additionally, the biggest update for me, Ross acknowledged it. Bjork acknowledged it. We got to have better microphones for the band. They say that there's going to be a renewed effort to make sure that they're loud and that you can hear the band throughout the game while it's playing music. Additionally, Hang On Sloopy, which has been kind of restricted to be played between the third and fourth quarters, it's not going to have that restriction anymore. Hang On Sloopy will now be played in just a big moment, organically, whenever they feel that the fans or the team want that kind of hype up song in the second half of the game. So no longer between third and fourth quarters. That'll just be played organically. Adam, anything on any of that, or just keep on rolling?
Uh, I'd say the biggest one. This is just from a fan experience. When Abram and I and Jason Stanley went to the Penn State game years back, I was really impressed with how loud they piped in their band music, because I swear their band was only half the size of ours, and they played it as if it was like a DJ song in the stadium. I hope we can get to that level, because I think it makes it just that much cooler. Because I definitely have sat in the stadium and you can barely hear it, depending on some places where you're sitting. That's no fun, especially how hard the band works, and it is the best. Just make sure people in the stadium can hear it.
Absolutely. There's many folks that go both for the football and for the band, right? Almost equally, and you want to be able to hear them. So, um, let's see. Other than that, last things here. Adam, would you mind going back on mute? The Let's see, game day soundtrack. This is probably the one that I'm most questioning. We're essentially going to be doing a video montage in the first half of the game that's set to the song Ohio by Camp, Caamp. Camp is a good band. It's like a casual, kind of like whimsical, kind of woodsy type band. I like them. I don't know that it totally fits the football environment. That's okay. So we'll kind of see what that looks like. I like this one a lot. They're going to be giving out Buckeye stickers, just like when the players score touchdowns or have interceptions and they get to fill up their helmet throughout the season with Buckeye stickers as a reward. The fans in the stadium that game will also get a Buckeye sticker for any time that they force essentially a noise based penalty, right? Causing a team to call a timeout because they can't get the play call in on offense, calling a false start, causing a false start because they couldn't hear the snap count, anything like that. It sounds like there's going to be kind of a video display where the fans get a Buckeye sticker put on the helmet. I think that's going to be really fun and really popular kind of there in the stadium. And then this is kind of the overarching thing. They're going to try to do better with TV timeouts, removing the like 5 minutes of everybody sitting and just listening to somebody talk, about an award description or, something like that for a very long time during the game, which kind of kills the energy. They're going to be really focused on how do you keep the crowd energy up? How do you amplify it? And a part of that is stop breaking the game up as much and stop doing as many on-field welcomes. That was a big thing Bjork talked about as well. Anytime we have a guest for now on or somebody that's being highlighted on the screen, all of that's going to take place at the bottom of the north ramp. So there will be essentially a Buckeye leaf for folks to stand on, really just making a marquee place for those things to happen, which hopefully will help cut down on all the shuffling on and off of the field that can happen on a game day. With that, Adam, anything else? Any other updates that I didn't touch on? I think that's definitely enough. At least folks listening will be able to, be have a working knowledge of what's coming.
I would just say I'm not sure, how well any of it's going to go, but to people that are just immediately casting judgment, people have asked for modernization of the shoe for years in different ways, and I don't think it's a good idea to just immediately ask to fire the guy that's trying to do exactly what people are asking for, which is just come up with new creative ideas to keep the in-person fan experience good. Because you're exactly right, the at-home TV experience is getting to the point that there might be nothing you could do, and people are just going to stay home because the product's that good. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited. A lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's mostly extremely positive, and for the fans that complain, you're always going to have fans that complain every single year. It doesn't matter kind of what the AD is trying to do, and we'll see. Hopefully, it helps. I can't wait for Texas at noon on August 30th. Hope to see many of you there. The podcast will likely be doing a tailgate. We're thinking we're going to be doing some Texas barbecue and smoking out some brisket, doing breakfast tacos early that morning. Just reach out to us if you're interested in stopping by. All right, kind of turning the page. Ross Bjork's quoted this week going on to a radio station, asked about the Penn State game there in early November, which many folks have circled on the calendar already for defensive coordinator Jim Knowles, who just helped us win a national championship last year, who tucked his tail and went back to Penn State, which supposedly was his dream school. It's everything that he's ever wanted. And now he's on a team that has all of the pressure to win a national championship going into this year. And a lot of that pressure comes from the Nittany Lions making the trip to Columbus in early November. With that being said, Bjork was asked about, noon games and, kind of the fans, the Buckeye Nation's frustration with how many noon games. This Texas game, egregious doesn't even do it justice, right? It's the biggest game of opening weekend. It's being billed as the biggest opening game to ever start a college football season. And for some reason, it's still set at noon to be the jumping off point for Fox Big Noon for the season. With that being said, he's asked, what do we think about game times this season? You'll have a big one against Penn State later that's not been announced. And Bjork essentially said, well, we don't control any of the TV times, but if I was a betting man, that's going to be another nooner because Fox can't turn down the biggest brands in the conference being in that noon time slot. With all that being said, I want to remind folks, the Big Ten signed a TV contract just, 3 years ago now under Kevin Warren, kind of right during the COVID period. And we made a ton of money. Every school from this conference gets a huge check each year by splitting up the rights between Fox and CBS and NBC and Peacock, right? And all these whatever other places that you can stream games now if you're a Big Ten football fan, which is great because of the money. Now, the issue with the money is it comes with these requirements. The big dogs in the conference are going to play at noon. Fox has decided that That's just what it is. And it doesn't matter about game day atmosphere or, recruiting or anything like that. Ohio State can bellyache all at once. It's still going to be the bell cow of the conference and making those checks for Fox because that's what the money is for. It doesn't make it any less frustrating, especially when you see this week the NFL essentially taking another step closer to ESPN. And as we talk about these channel wars that we were talking about on the last podcast, the NFL getting closer to ESPN is not a good thing for Ohio State, right? It's a great thing for the SEC, and it's a great thing for ESPN. And what I say when I mention that, here's kind of the clippings of that. ESPN will acquire key NFL media assets this season: NFL Network, NFL Red Zone, and the NFL's fantasy football platform. In exchange, the NFL will be receiving 10% equity in ESPN. All right. So what are we talking about there? Number one, the Red Zone for the NFL, if you ever watch Red Zone, it's essentially just the highlight package of that day. It goes live between each of the NFL games, clipping in for when big plays or scoring plays happen. It's a really popular service, and ESPN's saying, well, that's going to be ours. That's ours now. We're going to buy Red Zone. But the big piece of that, the NFL is going to receive 10% equity stake in ESPN. You say, why is that bad for Ohio State? Ohio State's not carried on ESPN anymore, right? None of our games are on ESPN. So when there's talk down the road, because there already has been, of, well, what if they made an NFL Red Zone but for college football? Who's probably going to get excluded from being a part of that? Ohio State and the rest of the Big Ten. It'll be all these SEC, ACC games. Lots of excitement happening and good coverage on ESPN. But when Buckeye fans are talking about this bias, right, that we feel has existed over the last couple decades, when you talk about a Mark May, when you talk about a Desmond Howard, when you talk about these haters on the ESPN network, there's no secret for that, right? They make a lot of money by driving engagement and making Ohio State fans mad, right? That's just something that happens. But when you see these moves with ESPN and the NFL getting even closer, you just think, what are the ramifications that'll have, down the road from a coverage standpoint, draft coverage, right? Does that mean Ohio State players will have a little bit less exposure than an SEC player, right, of the same caliber? There's so many of those biases, right, that can sneak in when you talk about these business deals getting done. Why is ESPN making a move like this? They're cutting a big check. Well, they're going to be integrated into ESPN's new direct-to-consumer streaming service, which is essentially ESPN Plus, if you've been paying for that recently. And why do they need to add things? Well, they're increasing what you got to pay. If you want ESPN Plus starting on August 21st, so here just in a couple weeks, you're going to be paying $30 a month, $29.99. Just for that service. So ESPN
I'm sorry,
said, we
Ryan.
need to
Can you
sweeten
say
the deal.
that? Can you say that again? $30
Yeah,
for
Adam, you're paying
ESPN.
essentially what people paid for what people paid for cable just a few years ago. That's what you're paying for ESPN Plus here by the end of the month. Your response?
I better get to watch Ohio State beat a lot of SEC teams for that kind of money. I don't know.
You'll get it in the playoff, buddy, but you're not going to get any of that in the regular season. So
Will they
it
repackage
is what
the
it is.
playoff of last year in different ways with different commentary? Just kind of replays? Maybe like a couple 30 for 30s?
That's a good question. I mean, you and I are hoping there's a 30 for 30 about a Michigan scandal that's going to get announced just in a few weeks. So yeah, that's all right. All right, all that to say, we hate Big Noon kickoff. We don't hate it, right, for Marshall. We don't hate it for OU. We don't hate it for Bowling Green. We do hate it for Texas. We do hate it for Penn State, and it doesn't make any sense, and it will continue to not make any sense. Lastly, here, just wanted to talk a little bit about the stadium tour I got to participate in yesterday as a staff season ticket holder, and I want to give some flowers out to the athletics department. To Ross Bjork, because as an outsider and as a season ticket holder and a staff member, I've seen what looks to be a renewed effort to just engage with the audiences that support you as a football program, right? The people that are your ticket holders. I saw an event they did earlier this week for all their caterers, for the admission staff that they work with throughout the season, to get, high level donors or potential recruits to games, right? All these people that they engage with, I see that they're doing a pretty good job of trying to highlight them, trying to celebrate them ahead of this season, which is a lot of fun. So yesterday, first time ever for this event, wander over there on my lunch break, really about 11:45 I think I got over there. Um, Nice long line, lots of families. Met another guy who worked at Waterman, really nice guy, colleague of mine in CFAES. So it's just fun to get to network with some other people. But it was kind of what you might expect, a full tour of the stadium, some time to walk onto the field, see where your season tickets will be for that year. There was a couple young guys who wore jerseys and who snuck a football in, and they probably, pretended to be Will Howard and Jeremiah Smith for maybe 10 minutes before one of the Redcoats yelled at them, because this is an official rule in Ohio Stadium. There is no throwing objects, especially balls, on the football field if you are not on the football team, which I don't totally understand. It might be a liability thing, but I was about 30 seconds away from asking them to not only throw me the ball, but record me catching it, because content is king, right? And I was trying to think about what would be best for the podcast. A few updates from the visit itself, touring on the club level. They had all these kind of big images up from the national championship run, including Jack Sawyer scoop and score, Emeka Egbuka holding up the trophy. They had this whole wall of iconic plays from the last probably 5 decades and photos from games, which was really neat to see. Got to visit the Orlando Pace recruit room. So it's where all the recruits hang out during the game, obviously filled with phone chargers and, places for them and their families to kind of hang out and grab a Coke or a water, that kind of thing. But you can only bet that room, it was obvious that it was just redone to add all the scores from the playoff games, to add the national championship highlights, to add the number 9, the 9th championship in Ohio State history. And you can see photos from all this on the Ohio State Silver Bullet Saga feed. Just head on over to Twitter at Ohio State _SBS. And I posted a bunch of photos from the tour itself. Also got to visit inside of the home locker room. That was my first time getting to see that, which was cool to see. There were no photos allowed in the home locker room. The redcoat that was in there kept reminding people, please put your phones away. You're not allowed to take any pictures. People would ask why. Redcoat would respond, because Coach Day said you can't, and we don't have a reason beyond that, which I kind of laughed to myself, and I'm 90% sure the reason is because the locker room looks like a locker room. It doesn't blow you away. It doesn't look like a spaceship like you might find down in the SEC. The locker room that's down in the bowels of the stadium is just a really nice, clean, football locker room. And it was very cool to see. I really like kind of seeing the inside, and, you got your defense players on one side, offense on the other side, special teams in the middle. I didn't get any indicators on the QB competition based on where the QBs were sitting. All the QBs were sitting together. Julian Sain was the first QB that I saw. His nameplate listed up there. Again, don't think that really means anything. But all that to say, it was cool to see the locker room. They do have one of those really cool spaceship locker rooms, but it's just down the road at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, where the team really spends the majority of its time anyway. All that to say, Adam, any questions for you from the tour? Anything I forgot to get into there?
I'm glad you got to do it. I'd love to go on one of those sometime. It's the kind of stuff fans don't get to see a lot, but hopefully they redo the locker room sometime. Just see what the new one would look like, because I'm sure there's a lot of cool stuff they could do.
I think there's a lot Bjork put on the list, bathrooms being one of the major ones. How do we get the bathroom situation better in the entire stadium? I would tell you there's probably a pretty major renovation coming down the road for both the stadium and the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. And for that, we'll keep you updated. Our next episode, I hope, is talking about some Michigan punishment that we're thinking might come out here in the next 2 weeks. We also will have the season preview podcast, where we'll break down kind of each of the games for the season and what we predict the records to be. All that and more coming up on the Silver Bullet Saga, which we'll kind of get the music playing here. Adam, anything else for the good folks at home?
That's it. Take care. Take care of your soybeans. Take care of your football teams. Get ready. Strap in. Buckle up. Longhorns. Hey, feeder cap prices are up, but you're going down.
Thank you for joining. Connect with us on Twitter at Ohio State _SBS. We'd love to chat with you. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Silver Bullet.
Yeah.